So Ryan, you have a hot take on daylight savings time.
Yes, John, we should subtitle this segment Ryan's Hot Takes. And so last week, Sunday, fourth Sunday of Lent, Laetare Sunday, in America we had the daylight savings time, the so-called daylight savings time. And you know what, I looked at this and I'm like, you know what, I'm not changing any of these clocks in my room because let's take a look. Why are we changing our clocks? The way time works, I looked into this. Maybe you already knew this and learned it in elementary school or whatever. But the way that clocks work is noon is when the sun is the highest point. It's in the middle of the daylight. And then conversely, midnight is actually in the middle of the night. And that's the way the clocks work. But at some point in time, Benjamin Franklin, a well-known Freemason who worshipped like devils and pagan idols and was a weirdo nudist, he came up with this idea and he said, you know what would be a great idea? Is let's change the clock so that people have more daylight to do things. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you changed the clocks, but you didn't change the sun and the rotation of the sun and the length of the daylight and whatever. So you didn't do anything other than you just said people should wake up earlier and do stuff earlier. Well, they kind of were, anybody with a brain was already doing that already. So again, this comes from the Freemasonic mindset of the French Revolution, where everybody was in the dark before we had this French Revolution and Freemasonry. They were all idiots that were controlled by the Catholic Church, but we, after the Revolution, have tremendous ideas, so we're going to come up with this American representative democracy, and we're going to chop off the heads of our kings, and we're going to invent a new system of weights and measurement, the metric system. We'll change the day and the calendar and everything, and enough of this old stuff. And so part and parcel of that is you have this daylight savings, you have the metric system, you have the, I think there was like a 10 or 100 day month or something that was invented, or a 10-day week. This decimalization that came out of the French Revolution. Well, ladies and gentlemen, hot take, I reject this. It is stupid. And I explain why. Because it's unnatural. What is natural is that noon is in the middle of the day. And we don't need to change our clocks. Christ said, rend your hearts, not your garments. And Ryan the Retrograde says, change your behavior, not your clocks. You don't need to play with nature. It's just like playing with nature. Let's compare it to other things. It's like contraception, okay? The human body works a certain way. You don't need to change it with pills, okay? Just manage it. So, and LMNOP-ism, the LMNOP agenda is the same thing. It's contrary to nature. You don't need to make new arrangements. We know how man marries woman and whatnot, and how that happens in the context of a marriage. And daylight savings is an attempt to contravene nature, just like LMNOP-ism and contraception. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Ryan the Retrograde rejects the so-called daylight savings time. And, you know, if somebody says, well, this thing happens at 3 o'clock on daylight savings time, and then I say, oh, so you mean it really actually happens at 2 o'clock? You know, don't give me any of that stuff. So my clocks are stuck on standard time, where they will remain. And noon, ladies and gentlemen, is when the sun is highest in the sky. Let's move on.